morning. I'm Hank Seemann with Humboldt County Public Works, and I'm here to talk about how sea level rise adaptation can be integrated with regional trails. Trails are a big priority for the North Coast and Humboldt County. There's a full spectrum of trails. Trails can be small natural surface trails through natural landscape. Trails can also be paved multi-use paths that are primarily for transportation. And so we can improve safety by separating vehicles from non-motorized users. We can improve transportation equity by creating alternatives for mobility that don't depend on a vehicle. And we can create opportunities for meaningful outdoor experiences and connections with the natural world. Trails give us a chance for joy and awe and even transcendence connecting to places like Humboldt Bay. And so the county, Eureka, Arcata, many other entities have been working to create this Humboldt Bay as a network of trails. And so, really for over 25 years, it's been a priority to connect the two biggest cities of the county, Eureka and Arcata. Highway 101 was built exclusively for vehicles without consideration for pedestrians or cyclists. And so there have been progressive projects over time. Eureka led the way, Arcata has done projects, and then the county is doing the connection. And so, we all had to start with what we had. And what we had is this transportation corridor, the railroad and then Highway 101 that were built almost over 100 years ago. And so, the railroad provides this linear corridor that is really advantageous for developing regional trails. You can see when these corridors were built, they went right through intertidal areas. And so it's created this artificial shoreline where, pre-development, the bay had this much wider footprint and there was this gradual transition to intertidal areas and just a much more gradual intertone. And so, the fact is we have this transportation corridor that sets really a fixed boundary between Eureka and Arcata. So Eureka and Arcata did a tremendous job getting their projects built in phases. And then the county has been working, it's taken about 10 years from the initial planning studies to being ready for construction. This is a big infrastructure project, and it takes time for engineering, permitting, funding, right-of-way. And this was an opportunity to address some vulnerable areas, and I can talk about that. So Brett showed some of the modeling that had been done in this area, and this is a simulation of flooding under existing conditions. And so this is somewhat comparable to the New Year's storm of 2015, when there was water that overtopped 101 and made it on the east side of the highway, and there was floodwaters of 1.5 to 2.5 feet. And, it was a combination of high tide and then strong winds that probably added another foot or 1.5 feet. And, the lowest elevation on the railroad was 9.6 feet. The North Coast Railroad Authority had no resources for several decades. And so the railroad was really kind of an abandoned asset, and it wasn't maintained, but it was also serving as a levee to protect the inland areas. And so the basis of design for the Humboldt Bay Trail between Eureka and Arcata, this is the simulation following the construction of the Bay Trail. So we raised the elevation of the railroad to 11.5 feet. The elevation of the trail will be 10.5 feet. And so this is a way of buying time for addressing flood hazards and sea level rise. And we were able to integrate that with the project. So our contractors started working late last summer, and they'll be resuming ground disturbing work after April 15th. And the goal is to complete that project this October. And so another part of thinking about sea level rise is thinking about lines of defense. And one of the most important lines of defense are natural systems. And so, our dunes on the peninsulas are really critical lines of defense, and also the salt marsh areas that fringe the bay provide attenuation of wave energy, and so they can reduce the energy for erosion. And so just even seeing the remnants of salt marsh can show the benefits of having that habitat type. And so that led to an interest in exploring the feasibility of trying to restore the salt marsh in this area to its the extent that it had prior to development of the transportation corridor. So we've done some initial feasibility study work, and we're just about to start more advanced feasibility. Feasibility really is multi-dimensional. You need to think about what's technically feasible, what's financially feasible. Is it feasible in terms of environmental impact? And then do you have social license to make this type of land use change? And so we'll be exploring all those elements of this, this concept. We'll also be looking at constructability. What would be the best way, just thinking about finances and environmental impact to construct this type of project. And we're really hoping to see if this is an opportunity for beneficial reuse of dredge spoils as a way of trying to restore salt marsh areas. And then, as soon as the project to connect Eureka and Arcata was, cleared on its path for construction, the county started looking at how can we expand the Humboldt Bay Trail network, and really with a focus of trying to connect communities that are isolated and separated by highways that are just exclusively for vehicles. And so we were able to initiate a planning study looking at extending the Bay Trail from Eureka down to College of the Redwoods, and it would, the intent is to provide connection to King Salmon and Fields Landing and Humboldt Hill. So this is a planning study that's really intended to see what's feasible, what's the best fit in the landscape, what's the best fit for meeting community needs and desires, and especially with a focus of trying to talk to as many adjacent landowners as possible, because they have a real unique perspective on these types of projects. So this just gives you kind of a bird's eye view of what the vision is. This is jumping off from Eureka's recently extended trail project near the Elk River estuary. And this is a unique area where it's along a seawall that's right across from the mouth of the bay. So that has its own risk profile. And then we'll be more inland, going behind King Salmon and Fields Landing. And then we're back on the shoreline. And here you can see we're adjacent to a segment of the Humboldt Bay National Wildlife Refuge. And so this provides an opportunity to enhance the stewardship of this shoreline. This is an area that's really seen no management and no care and maintenance for several decades. And we're also looking at ways that we can try to restore some of that gradual ecotone along the shoreline and potentially create a mechanism for inland restoration as well, and maybe providing tidal connection to areas that have been separated from the bay. So this is just an illustration of one of the strategies we have for adapting to sea level rise, is trying to incorporate some incremental measures to address immediate exposures and hazards, and trying to buy time as we think about a more multifaceted strategy for adapting to sea level rise. And this is one of those opportunities where we can incorporate adaptation measures into projects that are also providing other public benefits. Thank you.